Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Ask for More by Rochelle Paige. Narrated by James Cavenaugh and Sophie Daniels. Chapter 1. Ryland. When I went to law school, I had big plans that didn't involve returning to Mooreville. After passing the bar in my first attempt, I got a job at a firm in Indianapolis and was promoted to a non-equity partnership in only 5 years. My life, including the perfect bachelor pad downtown, was exactly how I'd pictured it. By the time I hit the 10-year mark and was offered the opportunity to buy in as an equity partner, a lot of the shine of working for a big firm had worn off. Then my cousin Baxter made the move from New York City to Mooreville, and I decided he had the right idea. My $150,000 would be better spent to start my own firm back home. I wouldn't have to answer to anyone except my clients, and I'd get much more time with my family. Living a couple of hours away had gotten more difficult as I got older. The drive wasn't that far, but my work schedule meant that my visits were sporadic, and I missed out on a lot of family events. Now that I'd moved back home, I was here for all the get-togethers, big and small, and there were a hell of a lot of them, since my female relatives came up with all sorts of excuses to meet up. Case in point, the reason I was lugging a dozen bottles of wine to my grandparents' house. As I climbed the porch steps, the door was flung open, and Schuyler shouted over her shoulder, "Ryland is finally here with the whites." "Finally?" I muttered to Baxter when he took the box from me after I passed his wife, who held the door open for me. "She's a little excited," he explained before making a beeline for the kitchen with Schuyler hot on his heels. Simon rolled his eyes. "Only if being a little excited means she's been waiting at the window for you to show up with wine she'll actually drink." After I brushed a kiss against the top of little Franklin's head, I clapped Simon on the shoulder. "I see that you're putting my gift to good use." Schuyler's teenage son was carrying his baby brother, strapped to his chest in a carrier. Most boys his age would have pitched a fit over something their friends would have considered to be uncool, but he looked at ease wearing the contraption. It probably helped that I'd picked one that looked like a tactical vest for body armor, since I figured Baxter would appreciate at least one manly gift during the baby shower. "Yeah, my baby bro has hella good taste." His lips curved into a smirk as he cupped Franklin's back while swaying from side to side. "He puts up less of a fuss when I'm the one carrying him around." "He's lucky to have a big brother like you. I hadn't been as much help with Silas or Ethan, but in my defense, I was only 2 and 4 when they were born. Simon had 16 years on his brother." Simon's expression softened as he glanced down at the baby. "I gotta get my time in with him before I head off for college." It was hard to believe the teenager was going to graduate from high school in less than 3 months. Simon had been a sophomore when my cousin started dating his mom, and he'd grown up so much in the past couple of years. I'd gotten the chance to get to know him better when he picked my brain about Notre Dame while he was choosing where he wanted to send applications. Although I'd done my undergrad at Purdue, I had gone to law school there. After I gave him the inside scoop, he decided to apply restrictive early action. He got his admission letter before Christmas and accepted it last month after weighing his options. The kid was as smart as a whip, and I had no doubt he'd do well there. "Graduation is just around the corner. Do you have any special requests for gifts?" "Cash is always good." "True," I agreed with a chuckle. "But don't talk yourself out of another present." "Well, if we're talking about something in addition to the check you're gonna give me," he wagged his eyebrows, "then you could pay for my season tickets." Attending games was a long-standing Notre Dame student tradition, so I wasn't surprised Simon planned on taking advantage of the seats offered to undergrads. The team had one of the biggest fan bases in the country, and access to the games was a big perk of going there. Watching them play was a bucket list item for most college football fans, even if the team wasn't one of their favorites. The Fighting Irish football experience was special, and I was thrilled that Simon had asked me to give it to him. Scratch them off your list. Thanks, that's bussin'. While getting to know my cousin by marriage, I had learned that teenagers had their own vocabulary that was as foreign to adults as legalese was to non-lawyers. You're welcome. I wandered around the room, greeting my family members with kisses for the women and backslaps for the men. Almost everyone was there, with a few exceptions like Dean and Vienna, who were already in the Netherlands for her speed skating competition early next month. Being surrounded by the whole Moore clan was what I'd been missing while I lived in Indianapolis, but that didn't stop me from giving my mom a hard time when I found her in the kitchen. Thanks for bringing more supplies, sweetie. After brushing a kiss against her cheek, I jerked my chin toward the bottles lined up on the counter. National Wine Day, really? My mom patted my cheek with a smile. Any excuse to get the family together. This one's stretching it, don't you think? Not even a tiny bit, she denied with a shake of her head. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders to pull her against my side. Love you, even when you're being over the top. Is that your adorable way of complaining about me asking you to bring so many bottles of wine? She bumped her hip against mine. I didn't mind stopping at the liquor store on my way over. I grabbed one of the bottles I bought and uncorked it, although 12 does seem a little excessive. My mom beamed me a smile as she held an empty glass out so I could fill it. I needed that many so I could help Skylar find a wine that she likes, now that she's done weaning. Never mind, I held up my hand. I don't need to know the details. She patted my cheek. You're 35, Ryland. You should be able to handle a little talk about breastfeeding, especially since you did it when you were a baby. Love you too, Mom. I chuckled and shook my head as I headed outside to the back porch, where my dad and grandfather were standing in front of the gas grill. The weather was unusually warm for late February, but still cold enough that I shoved my free hand into my jacket pocket and shivered. Hiding out here while the women get drunk inside where it's nice and warm? My dad quirked a brow. You don't have room to talk. You're out here with us. Maybe I just came over to say hello. My grandpa raised the lid on the grill and waved me closer. Or maybe he wanted to sneak some of my famous grilled turkey before everyone else was picking at the carcass. They're not mutually exclusive. Both can be true. My dad grinned. That's such a lawyer response. What else did you expect? I shrugged as I shot him a grin. He pointed at my wine glass. For you to be a good son and bring me a drink too. I think you're mixing me up with Ethan. My youngest brother was bigger than me and tatted up, and contrary to what most people would expect, he'd gotten into the least trouble growing up. Ethan was a gentle giant with those he loved. Probably, he agreed with a laugh before he headed inside. Turning toward my grandfather, I said, Now that it's just the two of us, how about that turkey? I was just about to take it off the grill. He pulled the meat thermometer out to check the temperature. I'll let you sneak a taste before I bring it inside, if you do me a favor. What kind of favor? I asked, even though his answer didn't really matter. Neither did the slice of turkey he cut off the bird and offered me. If my grandpa needed something, and I was able to help, I would do whatever he wanted. Did you hear about the sale of the Sanderson farm? Of course. The land wasn't in Mooreville, but a 250-acre farm on the outskirts of the county, being sold to a real estate developer, was still big news around town. The buyer is suing the county planning commission. I let out a low whistle. How did you want me to help? The county has its own team of lawyers. I doubt they'll want outside counsel to handle the suit. He also wants to try to reverse the sale, he added. My head jerked back. On what grounds? The County Planning Commission didn't approve his denial application for preliminary plat approval for a proposed subdivision, and he's blaming Marty Sanderson. Says he and his agent misrepresented the zoning or some garbage like that. The Sanderson farm had been on that land for several generations. The zoning was a matter of public record, and as far as I was aware, it hadn't changed in ages. I can't imagine his case against Marty will go far. Maybe not, but he's worried they're going to freeze his assets while they battle it out in court. He's already found a house in Florida and promised his daughter and her husband the money to buy a place in this same neighborhood. He heaved a deep sigh as he lifted the turkey out of the grill and onto a platter. His first grandchild is due in 2 months. That's why he sold the farm. All he wants is to be there for his family, but this lawsuit is going to mess all that up for him. Now he has to come back for God only knows how long. You want me to take this case? When he nodded, I pulled my cell out of my pocket and pulled up the Notes app. Do you have his number? Sure do. He rattled off Marty's phone number, and I put it at the top of my notes, along with the details he'd given me. All right, I'll give him a call in the morning. He beamed me a smile full of approval. You might want to call your old law firm, too. My brows drew together. How come? They're representing the bastard who plans on suing Marty.
Chapter 2. Waverly. I was absorbed in the research I was doing when the phone on my desk buzzed. Seeing the number for an internal line pop up on the caller ID, I tapped the speaker button to answer. Waverly Duncan, how can I help you? Mr. Arnault would like to see you in his office, Miss Duncan. My head jerked up when she mentioned the named partner. When? Now. My fingers trembled as I set down the pen I'd been using to take notes. I'll be right there. Wishing for about the millionth time I had an office that offered me even a modicum of privacy, I cringed when I glanced at the attorney in the cubicle next to me. Jack was a fourth-year associate who started in the same cohort as me, and we'd found ourselves in competition with each other for cases many times over the years, with me coming out on top more often than not. Jack's dark eyes gleamed with spiteful satisfaction as he leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms over his chest. Sounds like you're in trouble. Being called into a named partner's office was nerve-inducing, but there was no way that I'd ever let him see how anxious I was. Pasting on a confident smile, I retorted, Since I haven't done anything wrong, it's more likely that he's giving me a big case, or a promotion. Jack's lips pressed into a firm line as he smirked. Uh-huh. I bet that Mr. Arnault wants to talk to you about being on the partnership track, even though nobody else has been called in, and they've only just begun reviewing our performance. Because you're just that important. I wasn't surprised by the snickers from the cubicles closest to us. Although I'd gotten my J.D. from Northwestern University's Pritzker School of Law, a top-tier law school by anyone's standards, I had always felt out of place at the elite law firm where I had been a summer intern and was hired as a junior associate after graduation. Working here for years hadn't lessened my discomfort, because I didn't fit in with the other lawyers, who all came from better backgrounds than mine. Less than 1% of students at my law school got full tuition scholarships, and I knew how lucky I'd been to snag one of the coveted grants. However, living expenses in Chicago weren't cheap, and I'd taken out almost $100,000 in school loans by the time I graduated. With a monthly payment almost as much as a mortgage, I still lived in the same crappy studio apartment, didn't own a car, and bought most of my clothes from resale shops. Luckily, I was used to being on the outside, so their crap didn't get to me much. It took me about an hour each way to commute to the office, but I used my time on the train to keep up with various law journals. My reading had come in handy in several cases, something which had earned me the attention of the firm's partners and the ire of my peers. Competition was fierce among associates, with everyone wanting to come out on top. Grabbing a notebook and pen, I muttered, If by important you mean a better lawyer than you, then yes. My parting shot earned me a dirty look from Jack, and reluctant laughter from the other 4 years. Putting him in his place helped settle my nerves, but I had an empty feeling in the pit of my stomach by the time I reached Mr. Arnault's office. Judy looked up from her desk outside his door. "He's expecting you." Her lack of greeting wasn't a surprise. She saved her warm welcomes for partners or clients. "Thanks." I tapped on the door, and a masculine voice called, "Come in." Peeking my head inside the office, I murmured, "You wanted to see me?" Mr. Arnault looked up and smiled. "Yes, Miss Duncan. Please, come in and have a seat." After dropping onto one of the chairs in front of his desk, I smoothed the hem of my skirt. "It's recently come to my attention that you're licensed to practice in Wisconsin and Indiana, as well as Illinois." I nodded. "Yes, sir. After passing the Illinois bar, I took the exams in Indiana and Wisconsin the following February and July." "Taking the bar 3 times over is an interesting choice." He pulled a manila folder toward him and flipped it open. "Especially while accruing in excess of 2,100 billable hours during your first year with us, taking advantage of the maximum numbers allowed in our associate shadowing program, and exceeding our recommended number of pro bono hours." As happy as I was that the tone of this meeting was so positive, I was a little perturbed by how much attention Mr. Arnault was paying to my personnel file. It definitely would have been a lot easier if the uniform bar examination had been implemented a few years earlier. At least then I could have skipped the test in Indiana. "That it would," he agreed, strumming his fingers on the desktop. "Being admitted to the bar and maintaining your license in 3 states is unusual for lawyers, especially before they've practiced the requisite 5 years that would allow them admission via reciprocity. What prompted you to become licensed in Wisconsin and Indiana?" I set my notebook and pen in my lap. I helped with a document dump for one of Mr. O'Reed's clients during my first week as an associate. The client was a Chicago developer with a project in Gary, where everything that could go wrong did go wrong. He was being sued in Indiana, and something Mr. O'Reed said about being assigned the case for one of our largest clients stuck with me. His head tilted to the side as he asked, "What did O'Reed say that was so inspiring?" I briefly considered making up something better, but decided against it. That the only way someone with a law degree from Wayne State would get a partnership at this firm was if he made himself indispensable. He explained that the only reason he'd been assigned that particular client was because he was licensed in Indiana as well as Illinois. "That sounds like O'Reed." He shook his head with a chuckle. "But you graduated from Pritzker." I figured the advice still applied. I shrugged while fidgeting with my pen. Being licensed in 2 more states within easy driving distance couldn't hurt, and wasn't really that much of a time suck. "Your hunch paid off, Miss Duncan." He reached for a stack of folders and slid them toward me. "Burkhart Development uses an Indianapolis firm for their deals in Indiana, but they've run into an issue with a recent deal. Roger Burkhart asked me if we had someone who could take over 2 cases pertaining to a deal he did in the middle of nowhere, about 2 hours from Indianapolis." It seemed as though the taunt I'd lobbed at Jack was actually true. Burkhart Development was one of our biggest clients, and their legal issues were usually dealt with by a partner. Take over? "They also have projects in Milwaukee, with another firm representing them up there." Interlacing his fingers, he pressed his forearms against the desktop as he leaned forward. "He's handing us a golden opportunity to prove that we can handle his business across state lines. If you impress Roger while working on this case, it may be just what we need to tip the scales in our favor. Dealing with one lawyer on all of his deals across 3 states would be much simpler for him." Tripling our billable hours with a major client would be a coup for me, and would go far when the time came for the firm to choose which associates made partner track. "I'll do my best, sir." Win the case against the County Planning Commission, and you'll get partner track before the other 4 years. Land the rest of his business, and we'll give you a partnership in 1 year. I was stunned by his offer. Becoming a partner in only 5 years was virtually unheard of around here. My fingers trembled with excitement as I gripped the folders he had given me. You said there were 2 cases? Yes. The second is more of a contingency plan, in case the first turns out to be unwinnable, he explained. I see. The carrot the firm was dangling in front of me suddenly made sense. They didn't expect me to win the case that would guarantee me the partnership. Take today and tomorrow to hand off your current clients. My brows drew together. Is that really necessary, sir? I'm used to handling a much heavier caseload than this. I'm sure you are. But millions of dollars in billable hours depend on your performance in these 2 cases. We can't afford for you to be distracted while you're in Indiana, and we need you out there by Wednesday morning. 2 days wasn't much time to finish my notes on my current cases, but I would find a way to finish everything. Getting to Indiana was a different issue, though. I don't have a car, sir. He waved away my concern. See Judy on your way out. She'll make all the arrangements for a rental and a place to stay. A place to stay? I echoed. It doesn't make sense for you to drive back and forth when the trip takes at least 3 hours when traffic is bad. We can't bill Roger for your travel time, but he will cover your expenses. His answer didn't leave me any room to argue. Maximizing the bottom line was a mantra drilled into every associate's head. How long do you think I'll be down there? As long as it takes to convince him that our firm is well equipped to handle all of his business. Message received. Win or lose, securing Burkhart Development's business was my top priority.
Chapter 3. Ryland. I left several messages for a former colleague at my old firm before he finally returned my call on Wednesday morning. Hey, Ryland, sorry it's taken me so long to get back to you. You know how hectic things can get around here when you're in the middle of a big case. Leaning back in my chair, I tapped my pen against the top of my desk. That's your excuse for waiting until now to finally call me back? My reason, not an excuse, Mike countered. I ran my fingers over my beard. So it's just a coincidence that you waited until I'm less than an hour away from a meeting with my new client, so we can be ready to meet with yours soon. He's not my client. I rolled my eyes at how he was splitting hairs. Your firm's, then. Not even that, he corrected. We're no longer representing Burkhart Development in this matter. I had originally hoped to leverage my relationship with Mike to help guide our clients toward a settlement that would allow Marty to return to Florida without taking too much of a financial hit. Unfortunately, that option was now out the window. Since when? I was informed on Monday afternoon that Roger Burkhart decided he'd be better off with a Chicago firm for this matter. Mike's tone held a degree of bitterness that could only mean one thing. You represented him in the original deal? Yep, he confirmed. Due to attorney-client privilege, he couldn't share much of anything with me, so I didn't bother asking about the case. Do you know who he hired to take over for you? Arnold, Bamford, and Ford. They were one of the biggest law firms in Chicago, and their real estate law division had a hell of a reputation. Pulling my glasses off, I pinched the bridge of my nose. Burkhart is bringing in the big guns. And I just met with their ice queen this morning. She stopped off to pick up his files on her way down there. My brows drew together. Ice queen? Waverly Duncan. I shook my head with a sigh. I've never heard of her. I did some asking around when I found out I'd been replaced. She's a fourth-year associate licensed in Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana, The lawyer I talked to said that the guys in her own firm even call her that. She's drop-dead gorgeous but freezes everyone out, even the other women at Arnold, Bamford, and Ford. Petty gossip didn't hold much weight with me. I was more interested in facts, such as opposing counsel only being a fourth-year associate. I wasn't sure how many lawyers at Arnold, Bamford, and Ford had a license to practice in Indiana. But Waverly Duncan couldn't be the only one with land use experience. They could have chosen to send down here to take care of Burkhart's cases against the county and my client. The firm was too big for her to have been the only option, so I couldn't underestimate her abilities. But at least from the research I had done so far, Marty's should be a slam dunk. For me, it would take some ingenious lawyering on Miss Duncan's part to win. Thanks for the warning. No worries, man. Things aren't the same around here without you. Do you ever think about returning to the big leagues? Not at all. I'm quite happy with my little practice in Mooreville, I drawled. My lips curved into a smirk as I added, which you would have been able to see for yourself if you hadn't been replaced by the ice queen from the even bigger law firm in Chicago. You don't have to be an ass about it, he grumbled, acting as though he hadn't just been one himself. Don't call me the next time you need help. A minor point of clarification, Mike. I didn't call for help, I corrected. I reached out to the lawyer who I believed to be representing the plaintiff in a suit that's about to be filed against my client, hoping to schedule an appointment to discuss a potential settlement. I probably should have felt bad when he hung up on me in a huff, but I was sick and tired of former colleagues throwing shade on my decision to return to my hometown whenever I talked to them. If I burned a bridge because I took up for myself, I was fine with that. And it wasn't as though I faced off against lawyers from my old firm on a regular basis, or even kept in touch with them much. After I slammed my phone down harder than I should have, my assistant poked her head into my office. "Everything okay, boss?" Mike finally returned my call. Ivy's gaze darted toward my cell as she tilted her head to the side. "Did he already file the lawsuit against Marty?" "Nope, he's not even representing Burkhart anymore." "Dang." She let out a low whistle. "I get why you're pissed. The least he could have done was send you a text 2 days ago to let you know. It only would have taken a minute. I get that lawyers have to be cutthroat, but some friend he turned out to be." I shook my head, my lips curving into a grin. If he did before, I'm pretty sure he doesn't consider us friends anymore. Pfft, his loss. Ivy had been the last applicant I interviewed for my assistant position when I was getting ready to open my firm. On paper, she hadn't been the most qualified for the position. She'd just gotten her 2-year degree from a nearby community college and had no experience working in an office. I had even considered canceling her appointment, but then I decided she could at least use the experience of doing the interview. It turned out to be a good thing that I'd paid attention to the good manners my mom had drilled into my head growing up, because Ivy had impressed me enough when she came in that I changed my mind and hired her instead. Going with my gut had paid off. Over the past year, she had proven to be a quick study, a hard worker, and a loyal employee. He could definitely learn more than a few things from you. As if. She laughed and shook her head. I bet he has a law degree from a fancy university, while I barely got my associates from a school only the locals have ever heard of. Yet you're the better person. Her cheeks turned pink and she ducked her head. Aw, if you wanted me to go get you a treat from Leaves and Pages, all you had to do was ask. That's what you pay me the big bucks for. No flattery needed. Take the compliment as it was meant, just the plain old truth. I stood, grabbed my wallet, and shoved it into my pants pocket. Although now that you mention it, I could do with a treat, and I wouldn't mind some fresh air before I meet with Marty. Want me to bring anything back? She beamed a smile at me as I walked past. I wouldn't turn down a cookie. One chocolate chip coming right up. Schuyler's Tea and Bookshop was only a few blocks from my office, but it took me almost 20 minutes to walk there because I stopped to chat with several people along the way. The bell above the door chimed as I swung it open and flashed a smile at Simon. The teenager worked in his mom's shop during the week whenever he didn't have baseball after school.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?